I'm going to be talking about the methodology that I use to evaluate exercises to maximize torsion to attempt to induce longitudinal bone growth of bones that contribute to height. I'm testing some exercises right now to see what works and what's feasible. In short, the more movement involved in an exercise, the more torsion there's going to be regardless of what that movement is. And the torsion has to be such that there's some sort of weight applied. Otherwise, there won't be that deformation needed to manipulate fluid forces within the bone. There are criteria to evaluate exercises. First, the exercises must have significant weight. Shadow boxing and shadow kickboxing, for example, all induce torsion on the bone, but unless you add weight, it's not going to be effective, as the weight has to be sufficient to induce elastic and possibly plastic deformation of the bone. And there doesn't seem to be anecdotal cases of boxing/shadow boxing increasing arm length. I could be wrong about that. And boxing punches results in a lot of torsion, especially if you twist the wrist while doing the punches, and also on the legs when you rotate the trunk doing the punches. Right now I'm testing weighting shadow boxing. Most of the anecdotal cases of torsion-based exercises increasing bone length have some kind of weight or force on them, like tennis and swimming. Baseball pitching, the other example commonly cited, doesn't involve weight. However, there's a great deal of skill and the rapid speed could make up for the lack of weight. Olympic diving is the one example I could find for the legs, and there's a great deal of velocity in those movements. And those exercises usually only result in like 1 inch or so increase in bone length. We want to maximize the bone length and find the optimal exercises. I'd say 20 to 70 pounds is the right amount of weight per limb for the arms for a normal person. For the legs, I'm still testing stuff. The issue with higher weights is that when you use weights that are closer to your strength limit, you kind of become limited in doing optimal form. And because the more suboptimally you do a weightlifting movement, the more torsion there's going to be. And since there's more movement, you're going to be using smaller muscle groups, and you don't want to use a weight that the smaller muscles cannot handle. Second, it would be impossible to do these kind of exercises if you have any kind of injury or other issue. You'd have to rely on direct bone stimulation like epiphyseal tapping. Third, the spine is kind of difficult to deal with because of the injury risk. The threshold for disc/cartilage stimulation is much lower in terms of weight needed. Soft tissues undergo deformation all the time, just in day-to-day. I say focus on torsion of the legs and arms and don't worry too much about torsion for the trunk, just normal side to side, back to back, not so much twisting stuff for the trunk. Some exercises are going to induce a little bit of torsional force in the trunk, of course, naturally, but you don't really want to be rotating the spinal column too much. Fourth, you want to maximize dynamic movement in the exercise. You don't want to do static movements. You want the fluid within the bone to move, and you need dynamic, temporary deformations of bone to result in fluid movement in bone. Most exercises like squats, deadlifts, and bench only happen in one plane. You want exercises that involve twisting the limbs, such as dumbbell bench press with a twist, dumbbell rows with a twist, or hammer curls. You want to do things like wood chops with plates. You want exercises that have asymmetrical loading, such as doing exercises that are normally done with 2 arms or 2 legs, or both, and doing it with 1 arm and 1 leg, or maybe 1 toe or 1 finger. Do exercises with asymmetrical objects where the bar is loaded unevenly. You want exercises where the bone is undergoing a lot of movement, so potentially the bone could be shaking while doing the exercise. So you can either achieve this by doing things that destabilize the body, such as doing things on a balance pad, stability ball, or you can manually shake the bone itself. You want the movement from having to balance yourself. In deadlifts, instead of just moving the weight up and down, you can shake your limbs, supinate and pronate your feet to get some uneven load. And you can do 1 leg bent and 1 leg straight. You can move the bar side to side or back and forth while deadlifting. You can deadlift on 1 arm and 1 leg. Instead of going up in weight, keep thinking of ways to make the motion more difficult once you've gotten into a solid weight that doesn't feel trivial. For example, once you get comfortable at a load with hammer curls, you can try doing it in 1 leg. Skipping while holding weights is something also I'm trying. One-legged squats while shaking the bones in your legs. You can use less fingers to hold the bar. You can use parts of your feet during your exercise, for example, on the heel, the side, or all or only some of your toes. You want exercises with high range of motion, as that is going to result in more fluid movement in the bone. Unilateral, asymmetrical, work stabilizer muscles. These are keywords for potential torsional exercises, and of course, the word torsion itself in the exercise name. These are all keywords to search for potential exercises. In terms of rep ranges, it's better to make the exercise more difficult than it is to add weight, as long as you are in the sufficient weight range, which is what I'd say is about 20 to 70 pounds. But maybe you could do less, maybe you could do more for some rare exercises. I personally find when I shoot for reps that I tend to sacrifice motion and instead focus on just squeezing the reps out. So I'd say instead of aiming for high reps, I just do the amount of reps that comes naturally and shoot for more sets. Aim for about 5 to 15-second rests between sets. Do a circuit of exercises, alternating easier exercises with the more difficult ones to need be to reduce that rest period. Tennis players and swimmers who got longer arms did many, many repetitions. You want to spend your time training, not resting. There are, of course, many people who do train with these asymmetrical, dynamic, torsion-based exercises, and I believe anecdotally there are people who have teamed arm length with weightlifting. Although it may be selection bias for the mesomorphic body type, it is quite common to see weightlifters with longer arms than normal for height. The thing is, I see most of the people who are doing these things, these dynamic torsion inducing exercises, are not really doing them with enough weight or force, but some people do. But the people who recommend these dynamic torsion based exercises are the ones who usually use lighter weights. The other thing is to consider is how difficult it is to induce torsion on the legs, as unlike the hands, the feet do not really grip onto things. So the question is, if we were doing the same dynamic exercises for the legs as we did for the arms, would we have more anecdotal cases of legs growing longer? The goal here mainly is to prove that torsion-based training can increase arm length. And from that point, we'll have more people contributing to the thought process on how to translate this into the legs. But if we can do the legs now, of course, that would be gravy. This theory relies on the anecdotal evidence that weightlifters tend to have longer arms. There are just too many weightlifters doing high torsional inducing exercises on the arms that would fit the criteria. The goal here is to prove that these exercises that people are doing do in fact increase length. The goal here is to connect these torsional movements to the anecdotal evidence that weightlifters tend to have longer arms. Once we have that connection, we'll have more people brainstorming and we'll be able to design exercises for the legs and the spine. But there's no reason why we can't be doing stuff to come up with the legs now.